All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fit Chicks and Hormones podcast. Today, we have a special guest with us, Dr. Wendie Trubow, who is a functional medicine gynecologist, and her passion for helping women optimize their health and their lives. Her story is a little bit similar to mine and why I started being passionate about helping women hear the hormones. She struggled with mold and metal toxicity and other health issues as well. So she's also the co-author of Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great and Feel Freaking Amazing. And I just love the title of that. I have not yet read it, but it's on my list. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. So welcome, Dr. Wendie. So happy to have you here.
Great to be here, Angie. It's really nice. Thank you.
Yes, this is going to be awesome. I'm very excited. So let's just start out with you sharing your story. Like, what brought you to where you are today?
My mess is totally my message. And by the way, our next book is all about menopause and transitioning. Don't do what I did, right? Like, don't transition ungracefully, transition gracefully. So the first book, Dirty Girl, my mess became my message because I unknowingly became a loyal house for tons of toxins that then messed up my health. So I didn't know it, but I had lead and mercury. I had 5 different strains of mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the toxins that mold puts out when it's in your body. And then I ate a whole slew of which I'll call other environmental toxins like glyphosate. Actually, I didn't have glyphosate, but testing for glyphosate, gasoline fumes, flame retardants, endocrine disrupting phthalates, plastics, styrene, VOCs, you name it, I tested. I had a whole list of them. And I was so sick. And I looked at my husband and I said, I am such a dirty girl. And then I said, oh, we're writing that book because we really, like we're the poster children for healthy living.
Yeah.
I don't eat gluten. I didn't eat cow's milk dairy. I don't drink alcohol. Right. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat processed carbs. Right. And I was so sick. And, I'd lost half the hair on my head. I had gained weight. I had a rash on my face. And it was only when I discovered all of these toxins that I really understood like how impactful it is and how, not in a good way, right? Like how powerfully negative it was to have all of this and how much it was impacting the rest of me. So there we are. My mess is my message.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to mine. Mine started about 8 years ago. Same thing. I was living in a moldy house and all of a sudden I was sick all the time, rashes, and my hormones were tanked and my adrenals were tanked. I wasn't sleeping. And I was like, what is going on? I'm just in my early 40s. I can't be going through menopause already. And yeah, it was crazy just to learn and to go to doctor after doctor and then be like, we don't know what's wrong with you. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I shouldn't be feeling this way. It took many, many doctors till I finally found a mold doctor who did all the right testing and found all the things too. And then we started doing the healing process, which took years because and the thing is, I preach about it all the time, how toxic the world is. It's like in our foods, our cleaning products, our beauty products, the environment. And it's really hard because we just are living in it constantly and it's really difficult to control it.
50% of buildings are have had water damage. Yeah. 50%. So if you live somewhere, work somewhere, go to school and drive to get there, it's statistically probable, like almost 100% that you've been exposed to mold somewhere in that little roundabout. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah. We even went to stay at a hotel a couple weekends ago and I walked in and immediately I was like, oh, we can't stay here. I can just feel it. My body just knows it. And I'm like, nope.
Smell it.
Yep. Yeah. Which is probably, it's kind of annoying to some people. Are like, really, this is fine. I'm like, but it's not. It's right. If I notice it, I don't want you staying here either because it's going to affect you as well.
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit more into how environmental toxins affect our health? Like, our immunity,
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for 4 years now and I was an expert in functional medicine before that, but I kind of was like, I don't really want to deal with toxins yet. But then the minute it became personal, I got really into it. And so what I've come to see is that essentially toxins underpin everything, because they're so inflammatory. So think about it. Anything you're exposed to that is acting as a toxin for you. So, a toxin for you could be, I had a patient who was eating 10 pounds of mandarins every day. 10 pounds of mandarins is like 200 grams of sugar. And I said to her, you're just not meant to eat that much sugar, my friend. And she's super sweet. She's 80 now. And she's, this cute little old lady and very spry and very with it, but doesn't want to get Alzheimer's. And I said to her, well, we need to preserve your blood sugar because Alzheimer's is now known as type 3 diabetes because it causes such profound imbalances. So going back to toxins, toxins are extremely inflammatory, and they can be anything from a true toxin to something that you just have too much of that's acting like a toxin. And from that, it's inflammatory. And then what do you get? You get autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, celiac, Graves', degenerative diseases like Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, or Alzheimer's, dementia. You can have cardiometabolic disease like cardiovascular disease, pre-diabetes or diabetes. I'm going to keep type 1 diabetes out of it, but really type 2 later onset diabetes. These are all trackable to toxins because they cause an inflammatory and dysfunctional response in the body, and the body only knows what it can do, and what it does is it develops symptoms based on what your genes are going to promote you for.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And so like, I think the biggest thing for me was not knowing about these things and realizing it, like how, because we both work with women with hormonal issues and stuff, like how much it impacted my hormones. Like it wasn't just affecting, I was getting rashes and wasn't sleeping and stuff, but like there were so many things that it was affecting. Like what was your story like? How did that affect?
Yeah, so there's sort of, I always think of it like a camel's back, right? So I knew I got a lead exposure in August of 2018 because my neighbor took his post-war home down. And why that matters is that if a home was built before 1978, it almost certainly has lead paint in it. So he takes the house down. I live in a town where the properties are like this, like here's our house and there's our neighbor's house, and there's just this tiny little sliver of land in between. It's not quite row housing, but it's close, right? Like we're like 10 feet away from each other. So he takes his house down. It's the dead of summer. We love the fresh air. We have all our windows open, and the house comes down. I freak. I'm like, shut the windows. That's a lead exposure. Oh my God, no, we're not turning the air on because I don't want to circulate it through the house. I mean, I went nuts. And my family thought I was nuts. But over the next few months, my hair started falling out. And I was like, I know my hair's thinning. And my hairdresser was like, actually, yeah, it kind of is. Wow. It took about 4 months till she acknowledged. I went every 6 weeks. And finally I was like, I know it's thinning. And she's like, yeah, it is. And then fast forward another 4 months, we go to France, and I'm tired, man. I am so tired. And I'm making it through. We're on this great vacation. It's the trip of a lifetime. We go to these great gluten-free restaurants, and we're in the center of Paris. And I come home, and the next month I gain almost 10 pounds. Half the hair on my head fell out, and I had a rash just like you did. And, what every human thinks when they gain weight and lose their hair is, oh, I must have a thyroid issue. Yeah. I'm a doctor, so I can check my own labs. I drew my labs. They were perfect. I'm like, oh, I usually have some dysfunctional thyroid, but it was perfect. And then I'm like, okay, it must be my female hormones because I was 48 at the time. No, they were perfect. And then I thought, okay, it must be my gut because all disease starts in the gut. And I've always had irritable bowel with the celiac and all that. Okay, so I checked my gut. My gut for celiac looked pretty darn good. Okay, now I'm really stumped. And then it was only a few months later when I heard that when Notre Dame burned, it released 500 tons of lead dust into the air. And the closer you were to Notre Dame, the more you got, and the farther you away, the less you got. Back to the lead paint thing. That's the impact. And we were there the week after Notre Dame burned. And so I said to my husband, we all got a lead exposure, but I'm the one who's sick. I'm the sick one. So I tested, and it was significantly higher than it had been in the past. And really what I felt was fatigue, weight gain, hair loss, brain fog, and that rash. The rash was probably the mycotoxins, except it got kicked up by the lead exposure because I had 5 strains of those too.
Right. Wow. Crazy. So crazy. Yeah. And it's very similar. Like when I was affected, the rest of the family wasn't. Why do you feel, I guess I never looked into that. Genetics, I know, could have some play in that, but
yeah, it's about 10%, 10 to 15% of what happens to you is genetics. Think of it as the genetics essentially set the stage, but then what happens is the rest of your environmental exposures. And I always say, like, it might have been enough if I had only had a mycotoxins exposure, but then I went and layered on the lead. And by the way, I had mercury fillings that I got taken out, but it took me a while to get them taken out. They were in place for 40 years. Those silver fillings never stop off gassing, ever. till you
Wow.
take them out. When you take them out, you get a big old burst, but even while they're in your mouth, you get exposure.
Right.
Okay, so there's that. Then layer on that I didn't have a lot of resilience and just intrinsically, and I tend to push it to the max. Right. I think that, I grew up in that time when it was a badge of honor to work really hard, and I work too hard, and I still work too hard, and I struggle with that. That's like my sort of Achilles heel, is feeling like I contribute enough and I want to do more all the time.
Mhm.
So I push myself too hard, which means I don't have that resilience to accept stressors, because my body is kind of often very tapped, and it's like, what are you doing to me? Like, be nice to me. So there's that. And then just layer it on, right? So pile it on, and pile on exposures, and pile on stressors. And I have 4 kids, and like we were talking off camera, multiple businesses, and it adds up, right? And
Mhm.
I want to make a difference. So I spend a lot of time trying to be outwardly focused, but sometimes that's at the expense of the inward balance. And so all those things play a role on our risk. And then you layer on terrible genetics and 20 years of terrible nutrient status as a result of having had undiagnosed celiac. So it just piles on it.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So when it comes to, we kind of touched base a little bit on the symptoms. So if somebody was like, if they're like, I don't, because again, we're going through perimenopause, we're going into menopause, a
Right.
lot of stuff is happening. And a lot shows in the same, same type of symptoms
Mm-hmm.
as perimenopause. It's just kind of think maybe exaggerated when we are going, we have these toxins or whatever going on. What would most women be looking for, like, that may be different from just perimenopause or menopausal symptoms, that would make them be like, oh, maybe I should go get, my metals tested, or, all the things.
Yeah, I mean, let's just set the stage. So if you want to do this work, it is with a functional medicine provider, because mainstream docs just don't get trained in this stuff. So it would be like asking your plumber to paint your house, right? Like, it's just the wrong skill set.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't do that, right? Because they have a or maybe vice versa. Maybe they can paint, but like the painter does not do plumbing. So
Right.
it's the wrong skill set. So if you want an evaluation for this, it's definitely with a functional medicine provider. Now, how would you know you need testing? Okay, it's very easy. If you live on this earth, you need testing.
I love it.
Here's why. Okay, let me set the stage. 150, 200 years ago, there were very poor controls, and mercury and lead were used a lot. In fact, mercury is still used a lot today. Think of anytime you eat corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, it's processed using mercury. So you get a healthy dose of glyphosate from the non-organic corn, and you get a healthy dose of mercury whenever you eat high fructose corn syrup. In fact, I have teenagers, they drive me nuts. They bring stuff home and I'm like, no,
Right.
and no, and no, and more no, and let's practice no again.
Right.
So like this morning, I have celiac, which means I'm allergic to gluten. This morning I went to get my chicken broth out of the fridge, and I see cookies and cupcakes. Normally I don't go too crazy, except they have gluten, and we have a gluten-free house because I'm very sensitive.
Mhm.
So I call my teenagers and I was like, so did you bring that into the house? And they were like, yeah, it's just for 24 hours. I'm like, yeah, no, hard no. So anyway, the reason it's all important is there's so many ways that all these toxins make their way into our lives. So when I go back to, okay, 150, 100 years ago, there weren't the same kinds of controls. Even until 1978, we had lead in the paint. Until 1975, we had lead in the gasoline. We had lead in our pipes. Some places in the United States, 10 million homes still have lead pipes, right? So there's this just tsunami of exposure. And then when you're born to someone who had lead in their body, guess what? You got 50% of what their stores were. So that's why I'm saying, if you're living on this earth, you need testing.
Right.
If you have any type, and then the next layer is, we're all extremely reliant on plastics.
Mhm.
It's practically impossible. There was this cool New York Times article a couple months ago where the guy tried to go one day without plastic, and had something like 256 violations because he couldn't do anything. Even eating a piece of fruit, peeling that sticker off, there's plastic.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on a vegan leather chair. Guess what? That's plastic. My microphone has plastic. My keyboard, my mouse, right? The ring lights I'm using, everything has plastic. So that does get into our air quality. It gets into our water quality. So if you live on this earth and you have any type of symptom, meaning high blood pressure, low blood pressure, overweight, underweight, skin issues, hair loss, inappropriate hair growth, metabolic syndrome, cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, degenerative disease, autoimmune disease, have I missed anything? Think about, like, if you have illness,
Yeah.
or if you have a family history, and then people say to me, oh, it runs in my family. I'm like, no, you all eat the same, you live in the same place, you think the same, of course, and you have the same genes.
Right. Yeah.
So of course you have it, of course it's runs in your family, but it doesn't really run in your family, it runs in your behavior.
Yeah.
And so if you live on this earth, you need to be tested, because these things lead to degenerative disease, autoimmune disease, cancer, and dementia. Like, nobody wants that.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think so many people just only focus on the two things. Like when it comes to the women that I work with, like I need to eat right and I need to work out. Great. Those are
eat less, right? Eat less, eat better less.
Right. Right.
And move more.
Right. And like, yeah, not that way, but
Yeah.
those are the things that they don't think about, all these other outside factors that are actually affecting their health. And
right.
It's really hard, even for myself, when I was going through, it was overwhelming, like, oh my gosh. And I remember being in a constant state of like, oh my, everything is making me sick. And I don't know what to do. Like, it's almost overwhelming. Like, what would you tell women to, because again, because there's so many things we can fix, so many things
Right.
we can focus on, that are in that state of like overwhelm. Where would they start? Like, what would be the most simple things to be like, this is going to make the best bang for, whatever you're going to do?
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic question, especially because everyone who's listening, you have control over so much of your environment and so much of how you can impact it. So let's start with the foundational behaviors. One, of course, eat well. And what does that mean? It means eat food that doesn't have a label on it. Don't fry the living daylights out of it. Don't cook it to death. Don't eat added sugars. Don't drink alcohol. Okay. Like these are really not popular. I get that. But in terms of food, don't drink from plastic water bottles. If you're going to drink from a plastic water bottle, drink from a hard plastic bottle, and don't put hot liquids into it.
Right.
Okay. Try to get glass or stainless steel, wherever possible. God, I'm really struggling because I can't find replacement shaker bottles that don't leak. So I'm struggling with that.
Right.
But stay in the game, right? Keep trying to level up, and don't, under any circumstances, unless you are really stuck, drink from the single-use plastic water bottles, because A, they never degrade. So you're leaving your family a legacy of pollution, but also in you, they release endocrine disruptors, which throw the system off. Okay. That's the food. Then yes, move your body. If you can, move your body every day. Try to sweat. Sweating's good, especially for the women listening. Sweating is good. It means you're detoxing. If you don't sweat, it's a problem. It's bad for you.
Right.
Okay, we got to get you sweating. Then more platform things that help. You need to sleep. Especially Americans, we're like a badge of honor. Oh, I only slept for 5 hours. I'm like, no, you need more sleep.
Right.
Right. So that was probably the best thing the nicest thing I can say about COVID is that it allowed me some flexibility to understand how much sleep I needed, because I was no longer getting up at 6 to drive the kids and schlep them around, and I was able to get more sleep. And so I learned about myself after, I'm 52 and a half right now. I'm not a child, but I learned about myself that I need like 9 to 10 hours in bed every night. Who knew?
Right.
I have lived my whole life like I need to be in bed for 7.5 hours and I'm good. We're talking an additional 1.5 to 2.5 hours is what I actually need.
And that's a
to
lot.
really function. It's a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a lot more sleep than anticipated. And most of us need that. And the reason sleep is so important is that I'll describe your brain, but this is happening all through the body. When you sleep, the cells in your brain get smaller. And what that means is the space between them gets larger, the intercellular space, extracellular space gets larger. That allows the brain to drain toxins out of it into the lymphatic system that then drains it into the lymph and out of your body. Now, if you don't sleep enough, guess what? You don't drain your brain of all the toxins. So it's really important to sleep enough, and you have agency, right? Like you don't need to pay a consultant thousands of dollars for that. You just need to back up your bedtime by 15 minutes every couple of weeks, set up your life differently and get into bed. 10 o'clock is often the magic point for people because we get a second wind. And so if you stay up a lot past 10, your adrenals don't recognize it's 11 o'clock. They think that a lion's chasing you and that you need to now generate cortisol, and that messes up, you know, the later sleep. So get more. So we talked about food, movement, and sleep. You want to make sure you poop at least once a day. If not, you know, basically it's called the oroanal reflex for a reason. When you eat, you should poop.
Right.
Babies do, right? The minute you feed them, they have a pootastrophe and it comes out the back and you're like, oh my God, where did all that come from?
Yeah.
Right. And it comes up to their neck and you're like, how did that get there? And then you had to like finagle a way to get them naked and change them at the same time.
Right.
So those are the days.
Yeah.
So you got to poop every day. And so a dysfunctional gut will not allow you to detox. So you need to really work on detox. That's critical. Gut function is critical to detox. So make sure you're pooping, eating enough fiber. Fiber binds to toxins and mycotoxins and metals. It helps clean the gut. Think of it like a broom in the gut, moving things along. So make sure you poop every day. Get rid of toxic relationships, because those, you know, you can take the best supplements in the world and you can do all the right things. But if you have toxic relationships, either your marriage or family members or job, whatever that is, it's going to be more powerful than all of those remedies that you're putting towards it. So clean up your relationships. I'm a huge proponent of marriage. And if you can't fix it, get out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then that brings me to manage your stress.
I was hoping you were going to touch base on that.
100%, because stress is itself a stressor and a toxin. And so if in little amounts, it's beneficial, but in large amounts, it's actually quite toxic for us, because it signals a pathway where we, just from a physiological standpoint, we raise our blood sugar. We end short term, raising your stress is great. You know, it gets the systems going. Long term, instead of being functional, it turns to, instead of just putting sugar towards your big muscles in your legs so you can run from the lion, it ends up depositing as fat in our midsection. And that fat is particularly inflammatory. So nobody likes that fat. And so there's a lot of layers to this, but basically those are the 5 platform things. Before you asked about what can people do, because you can certainly test with a functional medicine provider, but before you even get there, eat, sleep, poop, move, and manage your stress.
Right.
Foundational.
I love that. That's exactly what, when I work with women too, I'm like, before we go get your hormones tested, before we do this, let's make sure all these other areas are addressed, because you can go get on HRT, but if you're not addressing these other foundation steps that you need, it's not going to do you any good. You're still going to be full of inflammation and not feel good and not sleep. And
exactly. And think about if you add more hormones to a system that's not properly processing them. So many people are constipated. When you don't poop properly, there's an enzyme. It's really creepy, but really cool. It's called beta glucuronidase. And it takes the hormones that have been made inert and bound and water soluble and trying to get out of your body. It separates those hormones. They become fat soluble, not inert. They become toxic free radicals, and they go back into your bloodstream, and then they get stored in your fat. So when you're doing everything right and you're not losing weight or you're gaining weight, it's because some system is dysfunctional and causing that. And then I want to go back to, because I didn't fully answer your question. These are the things you can do without doing anything, right? Do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to, it's nothing special.
Right.
And then the next level of that is, okay, anytime you run out of anything, set the food aside, try to aim for organic and minimally processed. But anytime you run out of anything else, makeup, hair products, shampoo, things you clean your house with, things you clean your clothes with, dishwashing detergent, whatever that is, anything you buy to run your house, look it up on Environmental Working Group. And if it's got a high rating, 1 or 2, maybe 3, it's in the green zone, buy it again. But if you're running out of it and you look it up and you're like, whoa, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. It's got cancer causing, pro-inflammatory, allergenic. Okay, right? If you get that, you go, oh, that's not so good for me. Then don't buy that again. Look up on Environmental Working Group what your options are and level up. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be better. But think about, how many things do we buy for our house in any given week, month, or year? And if you consistently level up through the course of the year, small changes lead to massive impact when they're done consistently over time. And so this is an area that as women, we have so much power, because every product that you put on your face, if it has an endocrine disruptor, guess what? It's making you fat. And that's why you can't lose your weight, because it's messing up your hormones. You can't process them fast enough. You store them in your fat till you can get to them. You never get to them. You just keep piling it on.
Yep.
And so these have meaningful, impactful changes that can alter our day-to-day experience of sleep, energy, weight, gut function, and then long-term risk of disease.
Right. Yes. I love that. Yeah. I love that everything you're saying is everything that I'm preaching. So it just makes me, makes you feel good when you're like, good, I'm on the same page as somebody else. Yes. I love it. Love it. I want to go back just a little bit, because you did we touched base on sweat therapy and detoxing. Do you have any specific things that work to help? So let's say you got this buildup of you're doing all the foundations, but it's built up in your body. It's,
There's so much you
toxins
can
are still there, hormones are there. What can you do? What are extra practices to detox the body from those?
Extra credit. All right. So this is still, we haven't even talked about testing. So this is something isn't right, but you want to maximize your body's ability to remove these toxins. So, okay. So I always say, do the most you can in the budget you have, and don't go outside your budget. But if you're saying, okay, I want to level up my detox, my response would be, okay, here's the sort of lanes you could drive in. You can drive in the sauna lane. And if you can do a sauna, my favorite is the sunlight and sauna. I think we have a code for it on our website at 5journeys.com, and you can get a discount, and that's great, right? That's best in class. Cool. But not everyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Then the sort of next level down would be, they have these sauna pods, and there are a couple that they make without PVC, so that you're not toxing while you're detoxing.
Right.
And those are collapsible and movable. So it's not like you have to invest in, hey, I have to have, a room for my sauna. You don't have to do that. And then the next level down for that would be like a sauna bed. I'm sorry, sauna blanket. Mm-hmm. So you pick the place you can be. Right. And whatever is the best in class for your budget, do that. Okay, sauna's one lane. Detox, Epsom salt, ionizing foot baths, Epsom salt baths, float tanks. This is another category of helpful detox behaviors. These are fantastic. Some of the ionizing foot baths can get pretty expensive, the detox ionizing ones. I was talking to Wendie Myers about it, and then I was all inspired to buy it, and I was like, whoa, it's hundreds of dollars. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that for a 5-pack, right? It wasn't quite where I was, because I already have the sauna. I'm like, I'll just go in the sauna more.
Yeah.
But certainly if that's, everyone responds differently to things. And so if for you, the water is the way to do it, that's another option. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is another fantastic thing. These are typically, you're not going to buy the HBOT machine, but we just launched a wellness center, and we have HBOT, and people come in and they have an hour and 20 minutes treatment, and you do it as often as you can. That's fantastic for toxins, for Lyme, for chronic disease recovery from COVID. It's fantastic for all of that. And so you can also do IV therapy, but you have to know what you're treating with IV therapy, right? You wouldn't just go and spend $1,000 on IVs to get rid of your metals if you didn't know you had metals.
Right.
So you need to know what you have to target the treatment. But if you clearly have metals, I've been doing IV therapy in addition to the oral therapy, so I can get rid of my metals. So there's lots of options for people. Infrared, red light therapy is also extremely beneficial for people. So there's tons of things you can do.
Yeah. Good. I love that. And so I know you said start with the basics, everything. And then when you go to testing, go to somebody who, obviously functional medicine, not somebody who can do the testing. You don't want to just, because I know you can buy them online, you can buy them everywhere, but then what do you do with them?
Right. I wouldn't, here's the thing, you could harm yourself, because think about it. When you pull out metals, you're also pulling out minerals and nutrients. When you do mycotoxins, you take binders. If you take them at the wrong time, you pull out minerals and nutrients, and you don't get your nutrients. So there's a lot of ways that you can, you won't directly harm yourself. It's not like you're going to wake up and go, oh my God, I'm so sick, I've got to go to the hospital. It's not like that. But over time, it's not in your favor, and it ends up costing you money that you might not need it to spend. So my vote is always test, don't guess, get the data, respond appropriately to the data, and continue testing so that you see where's the movement.
Right, right. I like that. I like that a lot. You did mention too, like, so as you're detoxing, you're cleaning everything, whatever you're doing, because I also did the mold binders, everything. And even still now, sometimes I use activated charcoal when I just know that I've probably eaten something that wasn't probably great for my body, or if I was in an environment that maybe didn't feel good, to just kind of help, flush out my system as much as I can. What happens like with our nutrients, like our vitamins, things like that? Do we lose more of them as we're doing this detoxing, or as we're going through this whole process of trying to get healthier and feel better?
If you do it wrong, it will. So it's so funny.
Right.
I have this patient, I try to be clear, like take it an hour and a half. If we're doing mycotoxins treatment, take it 1.5 to 2 hours before or after a meal, and don't take it with supplements. Definitely don't take it with your thyroid medicine. Like
Right.
I try to be really specific,
Mhm.
and still sometimes people slip through the cracks. So they'll be like, I've been taking this, supplement for months and I don't see the impact. I'm like, okay, talk to me about when are you taking it and how often? And a lot of times if they're taking supplements with their binders, then they're just canceling each other out. So, so intrinsically getting rid of mycotoxins is not an event that's going to take away your minerals and nutrients, unless you need the minerals and nutrients from external sources and you're binding them, you're not getting them.
Right.
It's the only way it'll take it away.
Right. Yeah.
The metals specifically can pull out, in particular, your zinc, but we also replace the trace minerals, copper, zinc, selenium, like we're replacing things. So that can absolutely be removed during metals treatment. So whenever we do a metals treatment, we're replacing what we're pulling out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Because we need those. I think there's a lot of people don't realize that they are important. We do need them. We need the right amounts. We need the right kinds, things like that. So it's not always bad stuff, but unless you're getting it from the wrong source. Yeah. So like, what would be, if this is me as a journey, I know we've kind of stepped here and there. If somebody wanted to work with you, like, what would that look like? How would that, do you do online? How do they reach out to you? What happens in that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first thing to figure out is, are you someone who wants to become a member of our bricks and mortar practice, which is located in Massachusetts, or do you want to work with us in an online capacity? They're different. So the bricks and mortar, because I'm acting as your physician, I have a lot more leeway to do stuff, right? Because it's like a physician-patient relationship. You're establishing care. It's a membership practice. We take insurance, but it's located in Massachusetts. So not everyone is in Massachusetts. I can't imagine why, but the winters are so nice. Actually, the winters are really mild here now that there's global warming. It's kind of warm. Anyway, so that's one opportunity. And then the other is we have our online brand called Dirty Girl Detox, where people can work with us and we offer testing for the environmental toxins, like, the styrene, the plastics, the gasoline fumes. We offer that online, and people can do detox programs they're like consumer facing. So if you aren't quite ready to be a patient, or you can't get to Massachusetts, there's an opportunity there. It was a lot looser in COVID, so we could see kind of anyone, but now that COVID's weaning out, people need to establish care face-to-face in Massachusetts. And so the online programs are ways to clean up your life, right? Like Feel Freaking Amazing program. It's 8 weeks long. You can do an elimination diet. You can learn about sleep, stress, hormones, toxins. So we have programs that we run, and we have ways that you can work with a coach, and that's sort of like the wellness wing, but that's all online. So there's kind of two ways. It just depends what falls for people.
Right. I love that. And that's, I think, important, because to be able to help anybody, whatever stage they're at, is wonderful. All right. So is there anything else that you would want to share with my listeners? Like anything? I know we didn't really touch base on the book. I think we've kind of covered things that might be in the book, but if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the book, Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great and Feel Freaking Amazing. It's really, it was my mess, became my message to the world. And it's really about a roadmap for how do you clean up your life, and what are the things you need to pay attention to in order to either get healthy or stay healthy, right? One of the two. We really all want to just be our best selves. And so how do you get there? And what are the things you need to work on? So that's meant to be a roadmap. I say to people, enjoy the read. It's horrifying, right? Like all the ways we're getting nailed with toxins,
Right.
but you have agency over tons of it. You might not have agency over where you live. Where you live is where you live for most of us, but you have agency over the quality of air and the quality of water in your home. You have agency over the food you put in your mouth, how much time you spend in bed, the thoughts you choose to have. So it's really looking at all of those things so that you can take a step up, level up, and get better. Because you can control a lot of it yourself before you don't need me for most of that.
Right. Right.
Or maybe you do, right? Sometimes I provide the sounding board, like, you've got this, you can do it.
Right. Or some people just don't know. They just aren't sure
Yeah.
what's going on. So they need somebody this is what's happening. Let's go in this direction.
Yeah.
So where can we get your book?
Go to Amazon for that. Don't type in dirty girl. You're not going to get my book. You're going to get something in your feed that's just not what you want to be. So type in Dirty Girl Detox book or Dirty Girl Trubow or Dirty Girl Doctor or something like that. And that'll get you the book. It's bright yellow. It's hard to miss. And then we sell it on our website at 5journeys.com, but it's cheaper for most people on Amazon because you don't have to pay the shipping.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah. And like I said, if there's anything else you want to share before we.
I think the most important thing for people to take away is that, and I've said it a couple of times, which is you have agency over how your life goes, and expect that you are meant to be vital, vibrant, healthy, alive, able and interested in intimacy till you're at least 100, and that every decade gets better than the one before. And if you're either on that path or you're not. So if you're on that path, amazing work, keep it up. If you're not on that path, let's get to work so that you can feel better, feel freaking amazing, right? That's our motto, feel freaking amazing. So really, like, don't ever give up and don't ever just take the status quo that you're meant to start failing. No, you fail because you're sick, not the other way around.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. If I could put that all in a quote,
that's the best quote, right? You are
yes,
meant.
exactly. That's wonderful. Yes. Okay. So, and then just to finish off, like where can people find you on social media?
I'm everywhere. My best friend from childhood was just saying, you need a TikTok account. I'm like, I don't have a TikTok account, not yet, but I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and they're all at Wendie Trubow, MD.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. And this was awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. This has been very, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I already talk about. And so it's just, again, it's good. It's nice to hear it over and over again. Constant reminders that, like you said at the end there, we don't have to live in this world of yuck.
No, there's so many other options. And thank you for having me on. This is really great. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Right. Thank you.